kind of do an update on Red Day, Tanya, and how we are doing with less than a week left in the month.
How are we doing? Austin, you got those slides? Because my computer is not loading up.
Sure do. One moment.
It might be dead. We're doing fantastic, I can tell you that. There you go. 4738 so far, 92 total donations. Remember, this goes until the end of the month, which is Sunday. So let's do that final push. Let's get us over 5,000. And don't forget that Austin puts these out on our outward facing Facebook page so that you can share it within your own groups on your business page and show how your market center, your business is giving back to our communities. I think that's really huge. And then didn't we figure that that was a total of, there you go, 14,214 meals. That is amazing.
Yes. Good job, everyone who participating. In 4 more days, we can definitely do 260 more bucks.
Yeah. So if we reach 5,000, then that's 15,000 meals. And I think that's pretty amazing. Heather, what do we have? 140 agents here?
Yep.
Ish,
about,
give or
yeah.
take.
Yep. Pretty awesome.
So I think that's pretty amazing. Awesome job for everybody. We'll have next Monday, we'll have the final tally on, you know, who brought in the most donations, because we have very competitive owners.
And yeah, this has been great. We've been getting such good feedback about our Red Day online, you know, fundraising, that next year, even when we can all get back together, hopefully, and do some volunteering together, we'll still probably have some kind of online fundraising component, because it is just a great way to get out there and in our community and touch base with our sphere and spread good into the world multiple ways. So we've been getting really good feedback from you guys on that. So always be thinking about who we want to be giving money to next year, right? And let's take a look at Austin, if you're ready, and Tanya, if you want to maybe talk about this, or Heather, how we are doing so far as listings for the month or the week. What's on the image?
We've had a total of 49 listings taken in the month of May alone. And I think that's pretty fantastic. Austin, you got that visual yet?
I do.
We just put this together in like 5 minutes. There we go. So out of those 49 listings, the top 8 on this graphic listed 18 in just this last week alone, from last Wednesday to today. So I think that's fantastic. As you can see, that 16 agents in our office listed 49 listings. Way to go. Amazing. Keep it going. I know just from having a conversation with Jenny, she's in the top, that was basically a listing from having a conversation about the Red Day donation. So that's how you can reach out to your people, and who knows where the conversation is going to go to, and you too can be added onto the list. So we're going to keep up on this and keep you guys informed of how fantastic and amazing you all are.
Yes, great job, everyone. I know we're talking about how much listings are down, and they are down, but we are doing the activities, and we have, you know, are starting to see some of that traction, and hopefully we can just keep picking it up. And then Nicole Zeb, she's not on the call right now, but I think that was her first listing that she got this month. So that's pretty incredible for her too. Awesome. So great job there. Let's turn it over to our wonderful friend Josh from Academy Mortgage. Thank you for being here, Josh. Give us a lending update. What is going on with rates, jumbo loans, everything?
Sure. All right. So just a quick market update, at least from our view. So previously, the Fed had started buying lots of mortgage-backed securities, and then they started to ease off the volume they were buying, and so we saw rates start to come up again. However, as of today, they started to ramp that up a little bit, which has caused to see some slight improvement again in pricing, which is great. So as clients are getting under contract, we're recommending that they lock in to ensure that they are taking advantage of these great rates because we do anticipate some more volatility ahead. Still with all the unknown, COVID, stay-at-homes, the different waves, and the Fed changing their buying strategies, it's good to lock in now while they can. Also, data came out on purchase application, and purchase applications are up 9% year over year, and then even up 3% week over week, which is great going into to show the strength in the market that's still out there. People securing their jobs, and along with the pent-up demand that there has been, the buyers are still out there. So I like that report that Mark Schultz put out a couple times, the lockbox report.
Yeah, we're gonna show that because that is a really good report.
All right, no spoiler alerts then. So so that's good data as well. So in terms of closing timelines, there's been a lot of myths out there in terms of what can be done and what can't be done. So we're still able to close in 30 days. We do everything in-house, including servicing right now with most products, unless it's out of the box product, and then even faster if we get an appraisal waiver. In terms of products, like you've asked, jumbo loans, we have one in-house product right now, which is a great option to go with. Rates are good on that as well. We've got additionally, we've got a brokered product. We sort of compare the two depending on what the client's overall buying borrower's profile looks like, and to see what's going to be best for them. And then outside of that, we've got another 3 brokered products that are more on sort of the like big statement loan, non-QM type options. Additionally, rehab loans have come back. We never lost the home style renovation, which is a Freddie Mac conventional program that you can do as low as 5% down. 203K went away for a little bit, but that has come back now. We now have that in-house. And then we also have a VA rehab option as well. And then mobile homes, so manufactured homes. Those, a lot of people had suspended those for a while, including us, other than some brokered options, but we have brought those back in-house again as well. So some of the stuff that you've seen go on pause has now started to come back and going strong there. So any questions on specific products that anybody's had any issues with or have any questions on?
What are the rates doing?
So rates are good. So they were sort of hovering around 3.5 to 3.6.5 with a little bit of improvement today. With a good borrower profile, you're easily able to get into 3.375, maybe a little bit better depending on how much you put down. But definitely still in the mid to low threes depending on your situation. So absolutely, FHA you can even get lower in certain cases. So yeah, they're strong. Now is a good time for both rehabs and purchases to get those locked in, because you just don't know what's going to be in the future.
Hey Josh,
yeah.
On the refi side, I know over the last couple of weeks they've been talking about the refis that have cash out the choices have been dwindling pretty hard. Is that coming back, cash outs, or we have to wait a little bit for the market to settle down a bit?
So we have brought those back and in-house. So we never went away from cash out refis on primary residences. However, there were pricing adjustments to it to where it didn't make quite as much sense to do it. However, those have been removed now, and on primary residence cash out refinances, do those all day long. We had suspended doing for second homes and for investment properties, cash out refinances, but we've brought those back now as well. So we can do those. It's sort of, it depends on the lender. Some who have the ability, the ones that have the ability to do everything in-house like us are able to do it. And some that aren't, are still having a harder time, finding an avenue for that. But yeah, those have come back. Part of it was the Fannie and Freddie were putting a pause on buying those, but they've loosened up the restrictions on those as well. So yeah, so those have come back.
Thank you, Josh.
You bet.
Great. Thanks
All right.
for the update, Josh. Always good to know what's going on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and we're going to keep digging into some numbers today because I think it's really important as we're all out talking to buyers and sellers. We have to know what's going on, right? What's going on in the market, what's going on with lending, to be as knowledgeable as we can be. So Josh touched on it, but our wonderful Mark Schultz has been posting these on Facebook, these lockbox activity reports, and they're really helpful to look. So Mark, I'll let you talk a little bit about this. And I posted actually the last 2 weeks just so people can kind of see that it's continuing to trend about the same.
Sure. Well, thank you. Well, I'm happy to talk about this. Obviously, there's a few of us in the office who like data. Dwight obviously loves his Altos reports, and Peter, of course, uses his Case-Shiller reports of activity. And this is another one that I found earlier this year that I'm keeping an eye on, the SentryLock lockbox. They're the lockbox activities across the entire area, so they're not specific to the Portland area. There is a way to get that information specifically, but they have SentryLock lockbox activity for both Oregon and Washington. And twice a week, I call my sellers and I give them a report on how numbers are doing. And this is one of the numbers that I give to my clients about buyer activity. This is a surrogate measure. Obviously, the real measure is how many buyers are actually walking into the house and the agent's using the lockbox for that particular listing. But this is just the overall market. And I had 3 listings that came to market right before the governor shut everything down, and that's exactly when all the showings dropped off. And so I could support my sellers by telling them this is why we're not seeing showings, is because the showings have effectively stopped and dropped off. So how you get to these numbers, just so you can have the conversation and have these, I use these as screenshots, is you go into the statistics tab in RMLS, on the RMLS, and statistics, and then you look under, on the right side, it says reports, and underneath that, you'll see SentryLock access. So statistics, reports, SentryLock access. You click on the link, and it takes you to SentryLock's Pinterest page. That's where they post these. On the left side is the Washington numbers, on the right side are the Oregon numbers. And what I do every week is I just go in and capture on Monday afternoon the postings from the previous weekend that go through Saturday. Then that is what I can then share to my clients, or in this case, I'm also sharing it on Facebook. Now, again, these are, and I've been monitoring the numbers, going back and keep taking each of these numbers since January. I went back and created just a spreadsheet for the numbers. So I know that now with this last week, we're now up to 20,067 lockbox triggers for the week ending May 24th. I know that that is 92.5% of the highest point at 21,683. So if I need to tell a story of success for my sellers, hey, look, we're almost back up to where we were before all this COVID-19 craziness set in. Now, should we be higher? Absolutely. Look at the left side of this chart. We should be up higher, closer to 25,000. But if we're down 20%, okay, that's just where we are. The positive story is that we've been building now ever since the beginning of April, since we dropped. Now, Megan in the office has also been able to chime in, and there is a way we can tease out the specific SentryLock access numbers for City of Portland, for the Portland Metro. And that's also under statistics, but they don't have the nice pretty graphs. You have to go create your graph for that one. But that's in the same thing, statistics tab, miscellaneous, and you'll see statistical summaries. So statistics, miscellaneous, statistical summaries. You'll click on the link that brings up a list of statistical summary reports. And it's a 5-page document. And first it starts off by each of the areas, by each of the counties. And then at the very bottom on page 5, there is a link called Sentry Lockbox Daily Activity by Service Area. And Portland is a service area. And it will go in and it will literally give you the daily count of Sentry Lockbox tags per day. And then it summarizes them by week. So if you're a spreadsheet geek and you want to put all the data into a spreadsheet, create your own charts, that's a good way to do that. If you want the specific information for Portland, that's the way to do it. I try and make the most efficient use of my time, and so I just take this screenshot of the pretty blue graph from SentryLock from Pinterest, and that's the one that I use, and those are the numbers that I track. But that's, if you really truly want to get into the numbers of it, that's how you can do it. There's also a bonus on that page as well, that miscellaneous statistical summaries is there. Actually, you can go see the number of listings. There is a weekly listing count by area and status, and the RMLS listing count. So if you really want to go crazy with your data, you can dig in and get that. It's also at the bottom of that page 5. That might be a little bit too crazy, but if you're having a hard time sleeping at night, there you go. There's your solution.
Thank you, Mark. I love you sharing all of that. And if you're not a super data person, you need to just remember it's trending upwards. We're not, quite where made up where we would be year over year without COVID, but we're getting close. And every week, the last 2 weeks, we've been up about steady 8%. So week over week. So hopefully we're going to keep continuing this activity, but use those to tailor your conversations, kind of like Mark was saying. And by using this data, when you're having these conversations, especially like our newer agents, it's going to establish such credibility, right? You might not be able to say, oh, you remember last year at this time, but you might be able to say, look at this is what the graphs say. So on that note, we're going to turn it over to Dwight, and he's going to share. He loves the Altos reports, and we've talked about them a little bit on here, but we want to really look at the graphs closer today and what do they actually mean, and what conversations do those mean with our buyers and sellers.
All right. I would like to comment on what Mark said also while Austin is pulling my page up. You could start with any of those that we sent you, Mark, or Austin. Remember that Keller Williams, Gary Keller is pushing that we have to be the economist of choice for our clients. If you want your clients to remember you and to have you as their realtor for life, they all can get this data, right? Just like they can all pull up the information on Zillow and other search engines for a home. What they need from us more and more is the interpretation of what that data will mean to the market, to the ability to get their home sold, to the pricing, to the timing, just like it would for the whole market overall. And that's where we earn client relationships, is by interpreting the data. So how many times has a client asked you about a home that they see on Zillow? What do you know about the schools? What do you know about the transportation, the kids, the buses? That's where we're having more success in creating value for our clients. So thank you, Mark, for doing that, because that's exactly the kind of information we need to try and get more people to put their homes on the market that are waiting. So if you have people that you've spoken to, then you could take a snapshot of that page like Mark does and send it out and say, hey, look, our lockbox activity is back to about 92. After this week, it'll probably be 95% of normal. That's amazing. And there's really no reason not to come on the market right now.
Dwight,
Okay.
I might, if I could step in and say, there's also one reason that I like the SentryLock weekly reports is because they are weekly. I think everyone will agree that the vast majority of our colleagues who wait for the middle of the month for the RMLS market report to come out and then talk about that number is effectively anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks late, because that is a summary of the entire previous month, and then it's 2 weeks for them to calculate it, put it together, and release it. So it's like stale bread. yes, it's filling, but it's not the most current. If I'm looking at trends, I want to look at them as currently as possible. And the Century Lock, I can tell my sellers, hey, look, we are in a week by week comparison. Here's where we're at. If I need to build a sense of urgency, that's what helps.
Perfect. Okay, Austin. Okay, so I have several slides. You've seen this before. I've talked about it many, many times. Every time I do, I get texts from people thanking me for doing it. And I think that this is one of those activities that the more you see it, the more you start to understand the nuances in it. And again, people can probably pull all this up on their own, but for us, we have to be able to interpret this data. So today I'm gonna slow down and I'm gonna take my time going through some of these things. So you'll probably notice, okay, so could you go back? Was that first page the one that you posted that showed the bar at the bottom, Austin?
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, can you go back to that?
This one?
The first page, to go back. Okay, so do people see the bar at the bottom that gives them the ability to highlight the presentation if they're on the Zoom call with their clients? Anyone? Well, so, okay, so yeah, I'm on an iPad and it comes up at the bottom. I think on a PC, it might be over on the right-hand side. And the trick is, if you can get to this point and push on the pin button, then you can mark it up for your clients like I'm going to do for you. So, so again, this is Portland. In the past, I've broken down to the smaller markets. Wherever my listing is, I can do this by zip code with this company. I can do it by city. And so in this case, I'm going to look at all of Portland so people can speak, with their clients about how the real. All right, next page. Oops, okay, let's go back. Sorry, I forgot one little thing I have to do to clear all these arrows. There we go. Okay, go forward. It's ringing and this is tied to my phone. This is the first page that you get. I never spend a lot of time on this page because it contains a lot of data, but I will speak to this because it'll show up in a minute. If you look at the bottom quartile right here, you can see that in all of Portland, the lowest price homes that are showing up right now in the activities are about 350. That's important because it shows up when they break out what's happening in the various quadrants later. And the top quartile is right here. Right now, it's about 1,000,001. Of course, this changes with Lake Oswego, West Westland, West Sherwood, with all the cities. Those numbers change. Okay, next page. All right, so can you zoom in on a median price?
I can. I'm just going to back out of the full screen view. Just one sec. Okay, yeah. This one, yeah, there we go.
All right. Ooh, perfect. Okay, so if we look at what's going on, this is where the money is in trying to interpret this. So if we look at 17 July, 18 July, 19 July, where are we going to be in 20 July? Now, this is the thing about Portland. So yesterday I was in a conversation with someone who has a home that we have listed in Lake Oswego. I'll get into more detail, but he was talking about how strong the market is and how the market is going up. And there's a good argument for that in all of Portland, right? So if we look at the median price in the summer of 2017, which is about when it peaked in 17, and we look at where it was in spring of 18, and we look at where it was in spring to early summer of 19, and we look at where we are today, we definitely see that this is the strongest year for median price. That means more of the higher priced homes are selling. That's median price. That's one way to interpret it. So if someone has any doubt about coming on the market right now, look at this timeline of COVID, right? We see in the green the weekly activity up here. We see how it dropped off as soon as we locked everything down. But look what's happening. This is consistent with what Mark just spoke about. The 1 week average is trending back up now for April. And we're going to see probably the highest level of activity of the year as we go forward, right? Because there's some pent up demand that's happening. Okay, let's go for the next page. Next page. Okay, price per foot. So median price we saw, and look at how price per foot correlates with it. So if we look at where the market was, so I'm going to focus on the 7-day average right here, right there. I like using the 7-day average because typically with my clients, I'm talking about what just happened that week. So if we look at the highest price per foot in 2017, it happened in July. If we look at 2018, July looks pretty good. If we look at 2019, the market moved forward a little bit. So this curve moved forward a little bit. And we really saw the market start to turn down in June for price per foot. If we look at this year, look at the peak. This supports what we saw on the other chart. So $262, almost $262 a foot for the average price per foot in Portland. And then when COVID hit, of course, it went down, but look at how it's going back up again. Now, the other thing that's important, if somebody talks about appreciation, is let's look at where the market peaked, the 90-day average, right here, 90-day average. And if we go over to the sidebar, it's about $252 a foot. If we look at, again, where we are today, a year later, we're closer to probably, just for easy numbers, let's say 250, let's say 260 a foot. The difference between 260 and 252 is $8 a foot. As a percentage of where we were, the 252, that's about under 4%. So we've seen a price appreciation on a per square foot basis in Portland, right? So we do the 260 minus the 252 leaves us $8 change and 8 over 252. So, all right, so let's go down. Can you scroll down on that page? Okay, I got to clear some of these out now. There we go. So inventory listed for sale. This is, again, this is all of Portland. So if you break it out, it will change, but look at what happened in, this is the seasonality. And this was an argument I was having with my very, very knowledgeable, well-informed, highly educated seller who didn't want to lower his price yesterday. Portland is very seasonal, and we always have been. The question is, what's going to happen to our market when it starts to open up right at the time where the market historically is around the time that it's peaking? So let's look at 2017. If we look at the week by week in 2017, down in, let's say, August, September, the market started to drop. If we look at 2018, this is a little clearer. This is probably early August, the market started to drop. Excuse me, early October, the market started to drop. If we look at last year, this is probably August, the market started to drop. So if we look at the last 3 years, we're in, July, August, September, we're in September, October, we're in, July, August, September. On the weekly basis, that's when it trended down. And then the average shows up a little bit later because it's a 90-day average. So it's including data from, 2 months before. So in this year, what's going to happen? Well, look at how far behind we are in inventory coming on the market. So if we look at the 90-day average, it shows around 1,100 units for April 20th. Last year, at this same time, we were at probably 1,350 units. So we're 250 units short this year on the 90-day average. Now, if we look at the weekly average, we can see that it's ramping up very quickly right now. That's the green. So we hit a really, really low inventory level in all of Portland. Probably that's, early March, right when COVID hit. And that was the lowest inventory. I'll bet you that was the lowest inventory in Portland on record that the MLS has. And at least going back 20 or 30 years, because I don't remember it ever being that low. And so if you look at what's happening right now, it's ramping up pretty quickly. And so my question to my owner that I posed to him is, if between March, here's the thing, if we look at that arrow right down here, if between, let's say, March 1, and it was at potentially 800 units, and now it's up to 1,250 units. So basically 2 months, it's gone from 850 to 1,250. That's about a 50% increase. These are the conversations you would have. Now, I couldn't go over this in this level of detail with my clients. They would just, get glazed over. But you have to pick your moments of what your point is that you want to make. My point was, hey, in the last 60 days, the inventory has doubled. And that's during COVID, because they're not selling as fast as they normally would. And so what will it look like when there's most likely owners that are sitting at home, bark dusting and painting and cleaning, that wanted to sell, but they're using the time at home to clean their homes up? So it's highly likely, in my opinion, that the inventory is going to go up. And so for this owner, we've been sitting on the market unsold. And if the competition is going to get worse, do we want to hold at this price to compete with more homes? That was the point I was trying to make with him. Okay, go to the next one. Oops. There we go. Okay, so market action index. This is my favorite. Actually, I tell my owners this is why I buy this report. This tells me what kind of strength my owners have in terms of their bargaining power. Remember that this blue line, purple line, is the difference between whether it's a buyer's market, if it's below that, and it was below that in 9, 10, 11, 12, and if you go back to about 13, it started to go above it when they really forced the rates down. But for right now, look where we were trending. This is what I pointed out the last time I did this. The seller's position was deteriorating between 2017, 2018, and 2019. It wasn't as strong. So the best time of the year, the sellers were not looking quite as good. Now look at what's going on. It's ramping up. It ramped up to a really strong position for sellers. So if anyone on this call had a $300,000, $400,000 listing, they knew that because they were getting multiple offers in the last 6 weeks. Rates have come down to stimulate the economy, and the net result is it's been putting sellers in a better position. So if we see that that's changing, it's changing because the supply of inventory is going up. So before it was very little supply relative to demand. Now the supply is going up and the seller's position is starting to change. And so this is the point that I'm making with my owner, who ultimately, after about 45 minutes of going through all this, all these predictions of what the market was going to do, he lowered his price by $50,000. So anyway, these are the comments that you have to be aware of when you're looking at these charts. And I wouldn't go through all of this with my clients. Again, they'd never follow it. This guy yesterday probably would have been excited to sit on the phone for an hour and go through it. But I would be saying, look, let's just look at this part right here. This is because the inventory is building and your ability to get the best price is changing. Okay, go forward. Here, hang on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So do you remember in that very first page where I pointed out that the lowest price point was 350,000 on that first chart in Portland? So here's how it's going for the least expensive homes in Portland. The next one up was in the sixes. It's changing a little bit. So for whatever reason, there is a little bit less shine in the lower price point. Probably there's more inventory. Rates went up a little bit. Who knows? Could be seasonal. But I would watch that, because if it starts to look like this trend back in 2017, this would be a problem for the market. Does anyone have any question on this? Okay, next page. All right, so now this is also one that's really important, and it starts to become clearer when you compare the graph on the left with the bar on the bottom. And so if we think about days on the market, and again, I usually look at the week because that tells me the moment it starts to change. So if we look at when the days on the market started to change in 2018, it was probably February. And it makes sense because in February, things that have been, more buyers come into the market, more listings come into the market. We just saw what happened. They sold very, very quickly. And so the average on the market just went right off a cliff. That's fantastic. It went from an average of 85 days down to 30 days. That's pretty significant. If we look at 2019 to see what happened, here we go again. February, days on market peaked. And then in 2019, remember in the first 30 days of 2019, the stock market dropped 20%. The S&P was down 20%, and then the government started buying bonds again. And they're doing it again today, which becomes really clear on the next page, or the next chart, excuse me. So here we go. Government started buying bonds back in about February, and the market started to take off. But it does it anyway in Portland. It's pretty seasonal, and true to form, it followed the year. So let's talk about this year, because if we see the peak of the market time, it was the highest in the last 3 years. It was just under 100 days, and right on cue, it was in January, right? So the homes that are selling, think of it this way, the homes that are selling in November, December, and closing in January have been on the market probably all summer. They tend to have the longest market time. Whereas in the spring, there are more buyers, new year, a lot of enthusiasm, rates have been lower in the last few years, inventory comes up, it sells very quickly. And so look at what's going on with interest rates. They're driving it down again. And curiously, if you look at that inflection point right there, that's probably about March, the beginning of March, when they came out and immediately started buying mortgage-backed securities. And so it lowered the interest rates again, and look what they did. So where are we today? Well, we're starting to go back up again. And, that's not unusual, because if you look back to 2018, they started to go back up in 2017. So we're right there where the average market time starts to go back up. So the question is, we know that in the best market of the year, we have COVID closing things down to some degree. What's going to happen going forward? Are we going to see the market time look like last year and the year before, where it kind of stair steps up? Boy, does it look like it's going to right now. So that means we kind of get this graph that starts to look like this, most likely. And so for my owner yesterday, where we've been on the market, he followed our advice and put it on the market over the COVID period. We sale failed actually right when the stock market dropped. The clients, we had it under contract and the clients backed out. But we did some things to it and put it right back on the market. So now we haven't re-engaged it under contract, and the inventory is starting to build and the days on the market are starting to build. Is it going to get better for him? Highly unlikely. And eventually he agreed. All right, so go on. Here's your quartiles again. So this one's going to just be a little confusing. Let's go to the next page. All right, I think we're done with this. So let's go to the next one I gave you.
All right, one moment. Little transition. Need some music for this.
So, we're trying to focus on conversations you can have with your owners right now to either get their prices down or get them on the market. More importantly, get them on the market, because we're tracking, compared to last year, our listings are tracking in the last month about half, and it looks like May is going to be there as well. And considering how good the interest rates are, boy, it would be amazing if we had more inventory. So here's a conversation that I had with my owner last night, because he's in the finance world. He's a stocks and bonds guy with a lot of clients, and he manages all their accounts. We got into this big debate about how we're going to come out of this. And so I'm thankful to Josh, because after they made this chart for us and made the presentation to us, I asked him if he would send me some of these charts, because we can use them in our presentations, right? So in this case, we look at recoveries, and we look at the Great Depression. Oops, hang on a sec. I gotta get my ability to draw on this thing again. We look at what happened in the Great Depression from 1929 to 1942, 13 years. In fact, here it is, the 12th year for the economy to come back. We look at the Great Recession that most of us just lived through, and it wasn't anywhere near as deep, and it came back, but it took 9 years. So now the conversation is, well, what's going to happen this time? This is an anomaly. So if we look at JP Morgan, they say we're going to have a V-shaped recovery and we'll be back within a year. If we look at Goldman Sachs, they say we're going to have a V-shaped recovery with, some sort of tilt there, and we're going to be back in 2 years. But if you spend time listening to various people, that it varies. There are a lot of people today that are talking about a W. It's going to go up like we see right now, and then it's going to dip back down again, and then it's going to go back up again. So the question to an owner is, how much time do you want to take? If it takes 2 years for the market to come back to where it was, do you want to be on the market for 2 years? Or do you want to wait for 2 years before you come on the market? What if they're wrong and it's 5 years? What if they're wrong and the recovery looks like this? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. We do not know. But these are the conversations. And so my owner was saying to me last night, well, gosh, it only costs us $1,500 a month to hold our house. I'm content to sit and wait for a couple months to see how this goes. And I'm saying, well, here's what will happen. The inventory will be higher. We know that. The trend is happening. You're going to buck the trend for the last many, many, many years in Portland if it doesn't do that. And he said, oh, okay, well, I get it. And I said, and look what's happening to the seller's bargaining position. It's already turned down. So the market will not get better for you, Mr. Owner, in 2 months. It will not get better. And he finally agreed, dropped the price $50,000. So, okay, next slide. This is another one that I'm having everybody put on Facebook. And again, this is what started the slide presentation. I think it's been a couple weeks now that I asked Academy and Josh to do for us. Remember that it's not as easy to get a loan today as it was. In fact, it's looking like the way it was about 5 years ago. So for my owner, I said to him, even if the inventory stays low and the interest rates are lower, it's harder for any buyer looking at your home to get a loan. They're calculating bonuses different. They're evaluating what industry you're in. They're looking at all kinds of things, the lenders are, that they didn't look at before, that make it even more difficult. So even if we have a buyer today that's willing to move, they may not be able to get a loan today. There's no doubt that this is going to have an impact on the number of buyers that are qualifying, that are going to be able to qualify to buy your home. That's the conversation I had with an owner who wouldn't come down in price. The conversation I would have with a buyer that's coming on the market right now is, let's look at your credit. Let's see if we can get some things paid off, right? This is what they consult with Josh about. Maybe we can consolidate some loans. Let's figure out how to get your credit up, because it's going to be harder to qualify. And we want you to be in the best possible position we can. Let's start right now. If you were thinking about buying in June, let's get going right now with the lenders to make sure that your credit is as absolutely fortified as we can possibly have it be. All right, next slide.
So that was all the slides that I had, but this is the one that you were mentioning earlier about the annotations. So I can quickly describe it. So if you're on a PC or Mac, this is what it's going to look like down at the bottom, or somewhat similar to this. There may be some things that I have on here just because I'm the host, but there should be a location here that says annotate. And when you click on that, it'll pop up this little bar that this is what Dwight's been using to be able to draw. You can change it to an arrow. You change it to a line so you can circle and draw things. But yeah, so this is what you use. You can change the color and everything. So if you're ever using this, using Zoom for hosting a meeting with a client, you can use the annotations to be able to draw and things like that, as opposed to using a cursor. So, but other than that, that was all that I had, unless you had more, Dwight.
I think I sent you one more page. Can you look for one more MLS page in your email?
Just give me a moment. Feel free to fill up that time.
Doing that, does anyone have any comments or questions on that? That's a lot of talking. I don't do that in a listing appointment, believe me, because if I did, they'd all be brain dead. So we'll see. We'll see how much everybody remembers. But most of my sellers could never live through that conversation, so I only pick one or two arrows, and that's all they can focus on and understand. But again, if you're going to be the economist of choice, you have to be able to look at these charts and say, okay, what does this mean for a buyer? What does this mean for a seller? And consult with those things throughout the year, and they work to get prices down. I just used them yesterday.
And Dwight, are you talking about the pending list?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So the most important thing I did yesterday to get my $50,000 price reduction, this is what we do. So if you look at, and then I'll be done. So just bear with me a little bit longer. Our home is, where is our home? Oh, okay, thank you. So our home is listed at $1,088,000 in Lake Oswego. We searched pendings to try and figure out what's been happening since we listed it. Oops, let me go to arrow. What's been happening since we listed it? We listed it, and since we started, there's been 11 pendings. And the trick is, we're right in here, over $1 million. What I said to them was, look, if I look at this chart, there's only 2 homes that have sold over $1 million since we started. But look at how many have sold between 900 and $1 million. And the answer is 9. So in the beginning with them, I told them there was a chance that we would have to be under $1 million, but this was back in January or early February. But let's start, because the market is so good and the rates are so good and the inventory is so low in Lake Oswego, let's start over $1 million. And then we sold it right away for full price. But then it sale failed in COVID. So now I have to have a conversation with them again about, okay, remember when we first started? Well, the market is starting to to not be as strong as it was when we originally priced it. And here's the evidence: 9 under million and 2 over million. This was the most impactful thing. When I said this and talked about it, the wife said, let's lower it under $1 million. The husband was still tough. And so the conversation ended up, if you're not going to come down under $1 million, come down under $1,050,000, so that if anybody looks above $1 million, they'll see your house first, right? So $1,050,000, I think $1,045,000 is what we agreed to, Marcella, if you're on the line.
$1,038,000.
$1,038,000. Oh, that's even better. So I worked to be even harder at the end. So if anyone looks at over $1 million, they're going to see our house first. Any of these buyers that I'm going to try a new feature here, that are looking just under $1 million. Oops, well, that's pretty close. Just under $1 million. They would see our house first. So that satisfies her that something is happening on the price. It gets me closer to where I think we're going to end up. It's a good price reduction, so it's going to demonstrate that my owners are willing to sell. And most importantly, when people creep up over $1 million, because there's not that much to look at between $950,000 and $1 million, they're going to see my listing first. That is the strategy I use all the time and have used for 25 years.
Hey, Dwight.
Yes.
Can I throw something in here? If you were trying to get to $1 million or under, what I would have said at that point is I would have drawn a little chart with 975, $1 million, $1.25 million, and then asked them if they've ever looked online and whether they ever looked between $1,038,000 or $968,000 and $1,038,000. The answer is no. But if you priced it at $1 million, everybody that was looking between 900 and $1 million, 9.25 and $1 million, whatever, would see it. And if anybody that was looking from $1 million up would see it. It would be the highest price listing in one bracket, but the lowest price listing in the next. And that's how people search online, and Zillow and the rest of the world have dictated how we price homes to a certain extent, not based on value, but on how people search. So by dropping it to $1 million, you would have doubled, tripled, or sometimes quadrupled the number of eyes that are on that home. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. In fact, that's $1 million strategy right there. So thank you for bringing it up. You've brought it up before, and I really appreciate it. These are things that people need to know. My strategy was, if you're not going to come down to $1 million, then let's be the first home that people see. If they leak up, I use the word leak, creep, whatever, over $1 million. But Peter's theory is, well, if they won't come under $1 million, at least come to $1 million, because every buyer that searches will search 900 to $1 million and they'll catch it, or they'll search $1 million to $1.1 million and they'll catch it. So you'll be sure to show up in every search, where at $1,038,000, I won't show up until they say, let's go over $1 million and see what we find that we might like. Right, Peter?
Thank you guys. So much knowledge. Peter, we were going to have you talk on this call, but we decided that had to be a separate call because you guys both talk a lot about your numbers. You needed your own whole call.
I beg your pardon?
We were going to have you talk on this call, but we decided you needed your whole own.
No, I heard you the first time. Where do you work now? Oh. I would like to share with you, we did a live listing presentation last week, and the seller talked 2 to 3 times more than I did, if you think that's even possible to find somebody.
No way.
Okay. But real quick, I want to just show you something real quick. Oh, can I share my screen for 1 second? Because we were talking about price appreciation.
Yep, go ahead.
Apparently not.
Oh.
Disabled, doesn't matter.
Didn't put in new rules. Austin, you might have to click that he can share.
I'm not sure if I haven't changed anything, so let me see though.
It's all right. Basically, the price appreciation, for instance, in 2005, annual was about 20%. In 2008, it was minus 15%. And for the last couple of years, it's been hovering just around 4. And prior to 2003, 4, or 5, the average appreciation in Oregon was 4% a year. So we're going back to what's kind of normal. But from a seller standpoint, you know, prices aren't going to jump up, apparently. And from a buyer standpoint, they are going to go up, but interest rates are going to go with them. So anyway, when it's my hour, I'll talk.
We want to hear all of your information. And you know what's remarkable, Dwight kind of said at the beginning, you can't just have this data and not know what it actually means, right? You truly have to understand it and pick out what conversations you're going to have. So thank you, both of you, for sharing that. We just have a couple minutes left, so I do want to talk about open houses because that has opened more up. Mike's going to talk a little bit about some best practices and some things there. But first, I want to have Cricket had 3 open houses this last weekend, and Bradley on our call hosted one of them. So Bradley, I want to have you share just a little bit about how it went, what precautions you took, what feedback you were getting from buyers, all of that.
So yeah, I did have an open house, and it did go pretty good. I'd say the majority of the feedback was people mostly not really believing that there was an open house. Both of the people who ended up coming in were super surprised, and I know one of them actually called Pam. It was because she was their agent and asked her if the open house is even real or not. But other than that, they seem to enjoy coming in, and I think as it starts getting warmer outside, there'll be more wanting to go to open houses than there's going to be open houses. And for them, since there was only 2 people, it didn't really, they didn't conflict at all. So there was no issues with too many people being in the house, and I just tried to keep everything clean. And I wore a respirator the whole time and told them that if they wanted to, they could, but I wasn't going to require them if it was just me in there. So yeah, I think the important thing is making sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe and giving them a good atmosphere to look at the house.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And it's good to hear that people are, starting to be like, wait a minute, open houses? And it's going to just pick up from there. Mike, do you want to touch base on just some of the rules, best practices that we should all be following?
Absolutely. The state, great news, both the state has loosened up some of the restrictions, and RMLS has reactivated their open house scenario so that they can support us in getting the news out there for open houses. But it really gives us one of our tools back to us, which is pretty exciting. Just so you're aware, the state is opening up in phases. Clackamas County has applied and approved for phase 1. Washington County has applied, and I have not heard since the weekend whether that was accepted or not. My impression it'll be probably approved by the end of the week. And Multnomah County, they don't have a timeline. Some of the incidences that have happened in Multnomah County have sort of delayed their numbers a bit. But the reality is there's not a lot of differences between phase 1 and prior to phase 1. You go from 5 people that could be in a group to 25 and 6 foot distancing. They're the only real restrictions you have. The rest are what you feel comfortable with or uncomfortable, and making sure that the seller feels comfortable with those things that you've put in place. I'm going to send out in probably the next hour a summary of those things that would be my suggestions you might want to consider making part of your marketing or open house plan. And they're just pretty straightforward things to it. But after reading through it, rather than going through it on here, if you have any questions, just give me a call. We'll chat through it. But it's like the preparation for a marketing plan or showings that you've done in the past, over the past couple of weeks, is that you just get a game plan together and then go forward to it. But that's really an exciting tool that we got back. And the key to it really is preparation. Many of the things that Dwight was talking about, if you take to your open house and make it part of your presentation and then ask them what their needs are, we really have an opportunity to build our business right now. So if you have any questions, just give me a call and we can chat through it. But I think you'll see it's pretty straightforward with it.
Do you suggest that we wear masks?
My suggestion is yes.
And what about asking the other people, just if they're comfortable?
I would, it just really depends on the type of house you have. If you're doing a condo where you walk 4 foot and run into somebody, then you probably need to be a little more protected. If you're in $1 million property that has 5,000 square foot, maybe not so much. So I think it's a judgment that you and your seller have to do. There's no fast rule to do it. You just got to determine what's safety, what is visually, politically correct, so to speak, in this environment.
And if it's anything under like 2,000 square feet, maybe have only a couple people come in, a couple groups at a time only.
Yeah, my thinking through it is that you could do one couple at a time or limit it to just the principals in the transaction that are looking and leave the family out in the car or having, things like that. I mean, if you have a smaller house, you might do it one family at a time and then do a note on the front door, please wait for escort or something political, on the front door. So it's a flip chart, come on in versus wait here for a moment while the person takes and reviews the property. So it just depends a lot on the players that you have involved.
Okay, thanks.
Anytime.
I'll look for that.
Good questions. Yeah, and reach out to Mike, or if you have questions too, we always do have our KWPP Agent Facebook page. I know there's been a lot of talk about open houses on there, and again, a lot of it's going to be individual to the sellers in the house. So I know we are a couple minutes over time, so we will wrap it up. We have a CE class today at 1 o'clock. Melanie, are you still on? Oh yeah, you want to talk about that really quick?
I'm here. Hi guys. Yep, we have our HomeSnap Pro, be a pro at HomeSnap Pro today. So I don't know if you guys really are familiar with HomeSnap, but it's offered through your subscription with RMLS, and HomeSnap is the official portal, the public portal to RMLS. So within that, you have your agent-facing HomeSnap Pro app, and then there's HomeSnap that the public uses, and you can connect with buyers and sellers on that. It's actually a really robust app and program that I highly recommend that you get on and learn about and discover how you can use that in your business. So that's today at 1 o'clock, and you have to pre-register. So why don't you go do that now?
Great. Thanks, Melanie. And thank you, everyone. I know we have a lot of meetings today, so we'll let everyone get on with the day, but thank you again for everyone who shared today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Great information.
Bye. Thank you.